Tom had asked me to talk a little bit about influence, as you already know, and I've never done this before, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And as I thought about it, it started very early in my life. It started actually before I was born, because my mother, I grew up near Munich, about 30 miles from Munich in Bavaria, and my mother had a miscarriage to her first child, and then she gave birth to 2 more children, my brother and my sister. And then the doctor told her, do not ever get pregnant again, because you're not gonna survive. You're gonna kill yourself and your child. Well, as it happened, she did get pregnant a few years later, and now she was in a big dilemma, because she had to make a decision. Do I abort this child, or do I go along with my beliefs, which were not to abort children and to go through with it? Well, as you know, since I'm standing here, she did not do what the doctors told her to, because they said there's no chance, not even a 2% chance, that you're going to survive this and you're going to kill yourself and your child. So you'd be better off just killing the child and live with your husband and your 2 kids. Well, she prayed about it and thought otherwise, and here we are. She made it, I made it, and we're both alive, 55 years later. So there was the influence. She had to make a decision. Do I do this or do I do that? Well, now I'm a 16, 17, 18-year-old assistant pro in Munich, and we played a few tournaments in Germany. We had about 5, 6 tournaments a year for PGA professionals. So I started traveling to some of these events and usually shared a room with another guy to share some expenses. And as it turned out, we're in those in that age group now when the hormones kick in and all that. And 1 or 2 of my friends, when we stayed in Hamburg or played somewhere, said, come on, let's go in the red light area. And I'm going, man, I'm not sure. I'm not real comfortable with this, So, and yet I had 2 guys, come on, we can do this. This is fun. And, this, and I was just torn. So somehow I managed to not go. Don't know what held me back. Hopefully the Holy Spirit, I have no idea. But, they went off, and I just went back to the hotel or whatever. But there's another influence, it's a bad influence, but there's so many times you have to make decisions. Do I, it's like a fork in the road. Do I go this way or do I go that way? So thankfully, I didn't walk that way.
And yesterday I was in West Palm Beach speaking, and I just finished speaking, and I drove up to ship something home by the UPS, and next to the UPS there was the Planned Parenthood place. And I looked at that, and I saw a subject with me. I'm not afraid to say that. And it's $360 million American dollars a year to go to Planned Parenthood, and I don't like it, because I know what comes out of there is abortion advice, to have abortion. So I looked at that, and here come these 2 women, and I saw them. They were walking around. They were looking around, and then they said, they're going for that door. That's where they're going. And then a 3rd one got out, and these poor women were wandering around. They were confused, and they were ashamed, and they were worried, and they were going like this, and I just watched them from my car. I was on the phone with my wife. I said, you're not going to believe this. I told her the scenario. She says, Tom, don't you. Don't I do what? Don't I do what? Now, why would someone say that to me? I don't know what I saw. Do you know why? Because my wife knows I'm going to get stuck into that situation. Do you know why? Because if they want to be influenced, they're walking around looking for influence. I'm your guy. Bernhard's your guy. I will try to influence you to what I think a way is great for your life. I've never seen a person I led to Christ who was sorry I led him to Christ. Not one in my entire life. None of them. And so I thought, well, she said, Tom, and I hung up. And I walked in, and I went into the Planned Parenthood, and I sat down next to the ladies, and they went, what are you doing here? Of course, I'm not pregnant or anything. What am I doing there? And I said, I was just going to tell you about my kids. She said, what? I said, I have 52 kids. She said, you have 52 kids? I said, yeah. I said, they're the most beautiful kids you've ever seen. And they were all thrown away. They were all kids that nobody wanted, abandoned, you know, abused and nobody wanted them. They're my kids. And she goes, why are you telling me? I said, because they're the most precious thing you can ever have. So just consider that. And I got up and walked out and went in my car because I knew the police were coming next, you know. And I sat in my car, and my phone's ringing, and it's Karen, so I ignored it. And I just sat and I watched, and here comes one of the ladies out. Pew! And here comes one of the other ladies back to their car, and they drove off, and one of them even looked at me and waved. You know what? I felt terrific. Now, I know that's not something good to do in America, probably. I was influencing, wasn't I? But I want to use my influence where I think it's important, and it can change people's lives for the better before they do something that I'm going to have to counsel them later for doing that they were sorry they did and they have incredible guilt about. Leaders, real leaders, only have specific areas of influence. Bernhard has influence with you guys, doesn't he? Could you feel it? Because you love golf, don't you? And you admire what this guy's done as a golfer. But I could take him to a Peter meeting, and they'd go, who's this guy? You know? Or some other kind of a meeting, science meeting, they go, what science? He wouldn't. But in golf, he is the man, isn't he? So he knows his area of influence, and he uses it. Now, many of you are CEOs of companies, presidents of colleges, head of organizations, CEOs, everything. You got there because you were appointed as that leader, weren't you? And then you had incredible power and influence from that leadership, didn't you? And you had the choice on how to use it. My type of leadership is even more difficult. I want to tell you, I'm not appointed to anything. When you go to a volunteer organization to serve, your only leadership is how many people you can get together to do something that's positive that you think you can do. That's leadership. It's called influence. Influence is the same as leadership. I don't get appointed that you're in charge. I have to try to do something that's good and get everybody to go along with me and hope that they will follow. I'm wondering Tiger Woods, if he had a different influence in his life. What a great life. How many dozens of majors or tournaments? 80, I don't know how many he's won. Didn't seem to make him completely happy, did it? I know hanging out with Michael Jordan, was it a good idea? I'm not so sure. One of the greatest singers I've ever seen, Whitney Houston, died the other day. Floated into her bathtub in some kind of a drug stupor, we don't know. Did her association and marriage to Bobby Brown, was it a good influence or wasn't it? They wouldn't even let him into the funeral the other day. I guess they thought it wasn't a good influence. Tim Tebow. Why do they love Tim Tebow so much? I know I love him because in the Philippines, 23 years ago, before he was born, and 24 years ago, he was in his mother's womb, just like Bernhard and his mom. And you know what they told her? You have this illness, because I had the same illness. I had a parasitic problem, it was so serious, but I didn't have a baby I was carrying, she did. And they said, you have to abort this fetus, or you will lose your life too. And you know what Tebow said? No, we're not going to do it. On faith, we're going to believe. And if it costs my life, that's right, but I'm going to have this baby. Because I feel like that's what God wants me to do. And now you look at him, he wins the Heisman Trophy, and this year all you hear about was Tebow, Tebow, Tebow. And people either loved him for his influence or what? They hated him for his influence. There wasn't much in between. Because it's the influence people are afraid of. Us that loved him, love him for his Christian influence. He hasn't done anything but honor God. And I love him for that. But the ones who don't like him for his influence for God. Because we're fighting a little bit of a war in our country now about who's influencing who. That's why you can't have the baby Jesus out in front of your church anymore or on public property. Because there's a fight now going on. How much influence are we going to have in our own country? So I want to use my influence in a positive way. And I look at Tim walk up and get the Heisman Trophy. They did a commercial. Before the commercial even came out, there was so much yelling and screaming about, they don't want this coming out. The lobbyists were saying, we demand this commercial not come out. Because why? All he honored was his mom for having him and raising him, and he became a Heisman Trophy winner. It's the influence in there of doing something that's right by God that someone else doesn't want you to do. What is your influence? I just came from the Philippines, and we were playing in a village, and I have kids, my own kids that I adopted, and I've trained them. They ride the unicycle with me. We do a family show. So we were doing this show with my 10 kids and me, and we went into this little village, and they'd been hit by a typhoon, and there was a lot of destruction. And I looked up, and, well, you guys heard it on the news. It was December. Did you hear the flooding in the Philippines? 3,300 people died in one night. That's more than happened at the New York tragedy. I mean, it was a huge deal, buried under all that water and mud. So we went in the village. They asked us to come anyway to do our shows and stuff, to encourage the people. So we got down there, and I looked around, and my kids said, "Gutom na sila, Tatay Tom." Daddy Tom, these people are hungry. We need to give them something. My kids know what it's like to be hungry. They come from the street, or they come from nothing. They had a compassion for the people. They wanted to have a good influence on me, didn't they? They said, Uncle Tom, before we play this game, can we feed them? Thousands of people, the victims are dead, and then here's all the people left. We're going to feed them? Well, we'll do what we can. So I went to the shop. They were raising the prices for anybody that was buying food, because now food was valuable. So not only have you lost your family and different people, now you go to get some food that you desperately need with the little money that you have, and they raise the price to get more out of you. Bad influence or good influence? Oh, some would say good business. That's how it is. You know, I would say bad. So I went to one of the owners of the markets. Said, "How much money you got?" I said, "I got no money on me, but my name is Tom Randall. How will that do?" "What do you want?" I said, "I want $5,000 credit if you would." He said, "Tom, what are you going to use it for?" I said, "You know, I'm going to buy $5,000 worth of food, and I'm going to give it to all the people I kid till I run out. Will you help me do that? It's the right thing to do." And he gave me that food at the original price. You know why? Because even people that are greedy at some point go, "I'm ashamed. This is the right influence. This is the right thing to do." And they did it, and nobody could buy any food from them for any other price, but they said, I said my name. Now, I'm not well known in the States. I don't have much influence in the States, but I tell you where I got influence. It's in the Philippine Islands. And when I need to, I bring that license out and I use it if it's for the right thing. And that was the right thing. He said, "Tom, I'll give you the $5,000 credit." I said, "I'll get the money here. My name is good." And in 2 days, I got the money down from Manila and paid for it. And we handed out that food. And my kids were right on top of the truck. They're handing out the food to those people. My kids had these big smiles on their face. And pretty soon the people we're giving the stuff to have a big smile on their face. How can they do that? When the mate comes up to me and said, "Tom, can I ask you something?" I said, "Yeah. Would you pray for me?" I said, "That's what I'm here for. I can give you food, but I can give you faith, and hope is more important." So I put him under my arm, a little bit of Filipino. He was the magistrate, or like the barangay kapitan. You might call him the mayor of your area, of that district. Everybody, you know, lined up for food. People lost their homes and everything, and their lives. And I said, "What do we want me to pray for?" He said, "Pray for me for courage." And I said, "Okay, what do you need courage for?" He said, "I'm the barangay kapitan." I said, "Well, then line these people up so we don't have a riot." And he lined them all up, anything else. I said, "Yeah, tell them everyone's going to get something. Enough for a week. One bag will feed you for a week, a whole family." And they started, "Yeah, and they lined up." And he said, "Anything else I should do?" And I had to do this and that. Then I came back to him, "I'm going to pray for you for courage." And then I finished. I said, "How's your family doing?" He said, "Well, I lost my wife and 3 kids." I said, "Where's your house?" He said, "It was right there." "There's no house there, it's just mud." And I said, "And you're out here doing this?" He said, "Just give me the courage to lead my people and influence them properly. And then I'll take my time to mourn when the time can come." That's a good influence. That's using your position. He knew he was the only one who had the position to line them up, get them orderly, and they would obey him so that I could feed them. What influence do you have is what Bernhard and I are asking. There cannot be a room full of men like this. With all of the wisdom here, I can look out, the only thing I see is gray hair out there today. In fact, I think I'm the only one here. But there has to be a lot of wisdom, and there has to be a lot of influence in this room. Wives, kids, grandchildren you start with. Then other friends, people you play golf with. How are you using the influence that you have? Are you using it in a positive way, like Bernhard did in '93, or are you using it in a negative way, like he did in '85, in the Butler cabinet? How do you use your influence?
So I talked about Bobby Clampett, I talked about Larry Moody, how these people have influenced me in a positive way. And you know, Bobby stepped out of his comfort zone, maybe saying, even though I was his friend, inviting me to the Bible study, and I could have rejected him and said, well, I don't think I'm going to that, you know, that's kind of goofy or ridiculous, and you know, like we sometimes find people who just turn us down. And how about Larry Moody or Tom Randall, how they have influenced me over the years to help me grow as a believer, help me grow as a father, as a husband, as a person in general. So we all have influence. Do we use it for the good, or do we use it negatively? And I'm certainly under the influence now. Hopefully not under the influence some people are. What I'm talking about is the influence of the Holy Spirit. And I'd like to be under that influence more and more, because I have a peace and patience and a confidence now that I certainly didn't have before I gave my life to Jesus. And I hope you all come to that same conclusion, and you all will experience the same peace, and you will all see me in heaven. By the way, I will give you free golf lessons in heaven, and I do hope I will see you there. So thank you very much.